Some moments sear themselves into memory, not because they bring joy, but because the pain cuts so deep you carry the scar forever. Isla Thorne was living one of those moments. 26 years old, sitting alone at a wedding feast surrounded by 300 celebrating guests, watching the man who'd promised to marry her exchange vows with the woman who'd been her closest friend since childhood. Every breath was agony. Every peal of laughter felt like a blade twisting. Every pitying glance from guests who knew her story made her wish she could dissolve into the ancient stone floor beneath her feet. She'd come because not coming would have been worse, would have looked like defeat, like brokenness, like she couldn't face them. So she lifted her chin, worn her finest dress, deep forest green, that her mother Helena had woven specially silver threads, catching the torchlight, and walked into that hall alone. Sat at a table in the corner, smiled when people looked her way. Pretended her heart wasn't shattering with every passing moment. Pretended she couldn't hear the whispers. Is that her, the one he left, poor thing, coming alone to this? How humiliating. She should have stayed home. This is just sad. Look at her so plain. No wonder Donovan chose Lady Celeste instead. The words drifted over from nearby tables like poison smoke. Isla kept her face neutral, calm, as though the gossip couldn't reach her. But her hands trembled slightly in her lap. She clasped them together, focused on breathing. Just survive this. Show your face. Prove you're fine. Then leave and never see them again. The great hall of Castle Thornhaven stretched 2 stories high, stone walls hung with ancient tapestries. Massive hearths blazing at both ends. Long tables laden with roasted meats and fresh bread, silver goblets catching candlelight. Musicians played from a gallery above, flutes and lutes, creating melody that should have been joyful but only made Isla's chest ache. And at the high table on an elevated platform sat the wedding party. Donovan Ashford in midnight blue with silver embroidery, looking every inch the prosperous merchant's son. Beside him, radiant in ivory, silk, and pearls, sat Lady Celeste Blackwood, her golden hair crowned with white roses. They looked happy, genuinely perfectly happy. It hurt to see. Hurt worse when Donovan's eyes found Isla across the hall, and she saw not guilt in his gaze, but pity. Like she was something wounded he'd had to leave behind on his path to better things. Isla looked away quickly, fixed her attention on her untouched plate, on anything but them. But memory has no mercy. It pulled her back 18 months into the past to the beginning. Isla's life had been simple once. Good even. She was the only child of Thomas and Helena Thorne. Her father was a master carpenter. His hands had helped build portions of the castle itself, crafting the intricate woodwork in the council chambers. Her mother was a master weaver, creating tapestries that nobles paid small fortunes to commission. They weren't nobility. They'd never be wealthy beyond comfort. But they were respected. And they'd given Isla something precious: education. She'd shown aptitude for languages. Young could read and write in 3 tongues by age 12. Her father's friend, a scholar named Archon Silas Thornwick, had taken her as apprentice when she was 14, taught her ancient Lycian Old Valdran, the runic scripts that most people thought were dead languages with no practical use. By 18, Isla was one of only 3 people in the entire kingdom who could read ancient Lycian fluently. By 20, she'd secured a position in the Royal Archives, the castle's vast library and manuscript collection, where she translated ancient texts, copied important documents, preserved history that would otherwise crumble to dust. It was quiet work, solitary. Most people found it boring and incomprehensible. But Isla loved it, loved the smell of old parchment and leather bindings, the challenge of deciphering faded ink and unfamiliar grammar, the connection to people who had lived centuries before she was born. She was good at her work, respected by the few scholars who understood its value. Content. She'd never expected romance. Never thought herself the type men noticed. She was quiet where other women were vivacious. Plain where they were beautiful. More comfortable with ancient manuscripts than with social gatherings. She'd made peace with that, found fulfillment in her work. Then 18 months ago, Donovan Ashford had walked into the archives. He was the son of Lord Aldwin Ashford, who'd made a fortune in the spice trade across 3 kingdoms. Donovan was handsome in that easy, practiced way. Dark hair always perfectly styled, expensive clothes cut to flatter a smile that came readily. He'd been searching for records of old trade routes for his father's business expansion. Isla had helped him find what he needed. They'd talked. He'd been impressed by her knowledge of historical commerce patterns. He'd asked if he could see her again, perhaps discuss more historical strategies over dinner. She'd said yes, stunned and uncertain, but flattered. 6 months of courtship followed. Donovan was charming, attentive, thoughtful. He brought her wildflowers because he'd noticed she preferred natural beauty to ostentation. He listened when she talked about her translations, seemed genuinely interested. He made her laugh with stories about his father's dramatic attempts to expand the family business. Isla had been careful not to hope too much. But when he'd proposed on a spring evening in the castle gardens, she'd been shocked, grateful, almost unable to believe her fortune. "You're unlike anyone I've ever known," he'd said, holding her hands in his, those dark eyes earnest. "You're intelligent, calm. You'd make a perfect wife, Hila. Someone I can build a life with." She'd said yes. Of course she'd said yes. She'd never imagined someone like him would want someone like her. They'd announced their betrothal publicly. Set a date 6 months away. Isla had started planning a future she'd never dared dream about, a home of her own, perhaps children, someday a life shared with someone who saw her. Then Celeste Blackwood entered the picture. Lady Celeste, daughter of Lord Cedric Blackwood, minor nobility with lands and lineage going back 6 generations. Beautiful, vivacious, everything Isla wasn't. She'd been chosen as maid of honor. She and Isla had been close since childhood, when Celeste's family had commissioned tapestries from Helena and the girls had played together. During those 6 months of wedding planning, Donovan and Celeste spent time together, organizing details. Isla had been grateful for the help. She'd never navigated high society before, felt out of her depth with seating arrangements and protocols. Celeste knew all of it instinctively. Somewhere in those months, everything changed. Donovan had the decency to tell Isla himself 6 months before this wedding night. She remembered every word, every inflection, the way the library had seemed too small suddenly. "Isla, I need to be honest with you." He'd stood across from her desk, couldn't quite meet her eyes. "I've developed feelings for Celeste, real feelings. I care about you, I truly do. But what I feel for her is different, stronger. And she has what I need for my future. Her family's connections, her understanding of society, the path she can open to real nobility for our children." He'd paused, and that pause had contained multitudes. "You understand, don't you? You're wonderful, Isla, brilliant and kind, but you can't give me what she can. You have no dowry, no connections, no social standing. You're a scholar, and that's admirable, but it's not enough for the life I'm building." Isla had understood perfectly. She wasn't enough, wasn't the right class, the right beauty, the right anything. She'd released him from the betrothal that same afternoon, told everyone it was mutual, kept her dignity intact even as everything inside her shattered. And Celeste had apologized, tears in her blue eyes that might even have been genuine. "I never meant for this to happen. I love him, Isla, I can't help it. Please forgive me. You're my oldest friend, and I never wanted to hurt you." What could Isla say? You couldn't control who you loved. So she'd forgiven Celeste, stepped aside, let them have their happiness, tried to rebuild her life from the fragments. 6 months of burying herself in manuscripts, avoiding social events, telling herself she was fine, knowing in the quiet hours of night that she probably wouldn't find love again. She'd had one chance and it had chosen someone else. And then the wedding invitation had arrived. Heavy cream parchment, expensive gold leaf lettering. "Donovan Ashford and Lady Celeste Blackwood cordially invite you to celebrate their union." She could have refused, should have refused, but something stubborn in her said no. She wouldn't hide, wouldn't let them think they'd broken her completely. She would go hold her head high, show them she'd survived. So here she sat in her green dress with silver threads at a table of strangers who barely acknowledged her existence, watching the man she'd planned to marry celebrate his life with the woman who'd been her friend. The meal progressed through course after course. Rich venison stew, roasted chicken with herbs, fresh bread, pastries that looked like art. Isla barely tasted any of it. She pushed food around her plate, sipped wine without noticing the flavor, smiled mechanically when conversation required it. The whispers continued, waves of gossip washing over her. How embarrassing coming alone like this. Pride, I suppose. Foolish pride. Look at Lady Celeste, so radiant. And look at her. No comparison, really. Each word was a small cut. Isla felt them accumulate, felt herself bleeding from wounds no one else could see. Toasts were made to the happy couple, to their future, to love and prosperity. Everyone raised goblets, cheered. Isla raised hers too, drank without tasting. Wished desperately to be anywhere else. She was so focused on surviving, on maintaining composure one breath at a time, that she didn't notice him. Didn't see him stand from the high table. Didn't see him walking through the hall, people parting before him, like water before a ship's prow. Not until a shadow fell across her table. Not until a voice spoke deep and resonant, with an accent that carried centuries. "This seat is unclaimed." Isla looked up, and the entire world stopped. King Alaric Greymane stood beside her table. 7.5 feet of barely contained power, wearing ceremonial armor of black steel chased with silver. A cloak of deep crimson draped over broad shoulders. Long dark hair pulled back from a face that was all sharp angles, and ancient authority beard shot through with silver at the temples. A crown of silver with runes she recognized as ancient lichen rested on his head, and his eyes, golden eyes that seemed to see everything, burning with intelligence, and something that might have been sorrow or recognition. Behind him, 5 massive wolves, each the size of a small pony, black fur gleaming in the firelight, golden eyes matching their masters. They watched her with the same intensity, patient and alert, and somehow protective. The entire hall had gone silent. 300 people holding their breath, conversations dying mid-word. The king had just walked across the entire hall to a back table. To her. Isla's mind went blank. Her throat closed. She couldn't speak. Couldn't think. Could only stare up at this figure from legends who was somehow standing here real and solid and waiting for an answer. Your Majesty, she managed finally, her voice barely audible. Yes, the seat is empty. May I? He gestured to the chair beside her. She could only nod, stunned beyond words. He sat. The chair seemed too small for him. His wolves arranged themselves in a semicircle around the table, creating a barrier between them and the rest of the hall, a protective wall of fur and fang and watchful intelligence. The silence stretched, 300 people waiting to see what would happen. Why the king had left the high table. Why he was sitting with a nobody scholar at a back corner table. King Alaric reached for the wine pitcher on the table, poured fresh goblets for both of them, raised his to her. To surviving tedious social obligations. Isla blinked, uncertain she'd heard correctly. Was the king making a joke with her? He was waiting, goblet raised expectant. She lifted hers, touched the rim to his. The crystal rang softly. They drank. The wine was better than what she'd been served before, rich and complex with notes of cherry and oak. He must have had servants bring it. You look as though you'd rather face a firing squad than be here, he said quietly, setting his goblet down. Not a question, an observation. Isla felt heat rise to her face. Your Majesty, forgive me, I didn't mean peace. He interrupted gently, the word carrying no command, only kindness. I meant no offense. I recognize the expression. I wear it often enough at these gatherings myself. She stared at him. But you're the king. Surely you enjoy such celebrations? He smiled, and it softened his features, made him look younger. I've attended 3,000 weddings in my lifetime. The novelty wore thin around wedding number 50. Despite everything, the humiliation, the pain, the weight of 300 pairs of eyes watching, Isla laughed. It was small, surprised, nervous, but real. His smile widened fractionally. Better. You should laugh more. It suits you far better than misery. How did you? She stopped. How did you know I was miserable? He looked at her directly, those golden eyes steady and kind. Your former betrothed is at the high table. The way he keeps glancing over here with guilt written across his face. The way you haven't looked at him once. The whispers I've been hearing all evening about the scorned woman who came anyway. He paused. It wasn't difficult to deduce. Isla wanted to sink through the floor. Everyone knew. Everyone was talking. Even the king knew her shame. I should go, she said quietly. This was a mistake. Wait. His hand touched her arm, gentle and brief. I have a proposition. What? An arrangement. For this evening only. She looked at him warily. What kind of arrangement could a king possibly want with her? He leaned forward slightly, his voice low enough that only she could hear. Everyone here is watching you, pitying you, gossiping about your humiliation. But if you act as though you're here with me as my guest, my companion for the evening, suddenly the narrative changes completely. You're not the scorned woman. You're the lady who caught a king's interest. They'll stop pitying and start envying. Isla stared at him, trying to process. Why would you do this? You don't know me. He was quiet for a moment, considering. Then, I know you work in my archives. I know you're one of 3 scholars who can read ancient Lichen. I know you translated the Valdorian Accords last year. Beautiful work, by the way. The clarity of your interpretation was remarkable. He paused, held her gaze. I know you're brilliant, and I know you're suffering through this feast alone, while those who wronged you celebrate at the high table. That offends me. I can't undo what happened to you, but I can give you one evening of dignity. One evening where you're not the object of pity, but of curiosity and respect. He leaned back slightly. So, do you accept? Isla sat frozen, her mind spinning. This was insane, impossible. Kings didn't do things like this. But he was looking at her with genuine concern in those ancient eyes. And she was so tired. So tired of being small and invisible, and not enough. Just for one evening, what would it be like to be seen to matter? Yes, she whispered. Yes, Your Majesty. Thank you. Alaric, his voice was gentle. For tonight, please. Just Alaric. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Servants appeared at their table as though conjured, bringing better food, better wine. The musicians shifted to a softer, more intimate melody, and the whispers, oh, the whispers exploded like wildfire through dry grass. Did you see that the king is sitting with her? With the scholar, why would he? Maybe she's not as plain as we thought. Maybe he sees something we missed. Look at Donovan's face. He looks stunned. Isla didn't look at Donovan, kept her eyes on Alaric, this impossible king who'd chosen to sit with her, who was talking to her now like she mattered. What are you translating currently? He asked, his tone genuinely interested. A collection of prophecies, Isla said, finding her voice growing steadier. Ancient Lycian texts from the early days of the kingdom. They're very fragmented, difficult to piece together, but fascinating. What do they predict? Various things. Wars, alliances, changes in power. She paused, considering. One mentions a king without heir finding his mate in a house of knowledge. I'm still working out the translations. Some of the words have multiple meanings. Something flickered in his expression. Interest, recognition, something deeper. Tell me more. They talked for an hour. About prophecies in history, about the difference between living through events and studying them afterward. He'd been alive for some of the events she'd translated, could confirm details no text contained, add context no scholar had access to. She was fascinated, asking questions, pushing for clarification. He answered patiently, seemed to enjoy her curiosity, her intelligence, the way she challenged his interpretations with evidence from the texts. The hall watched. Speculation grew. At the high table, Donovan couldn't stop staring. Celeste looked confused. Lord Cedric Blackwood, her father, looked calculating, wondering what this meant. After the meal, when the musicians began playing dance music, Alaric stood, offered his hand to Isla. We should dance, to make this convincing. Isla's breath caught. I'm not trained in court dances. I'll stumble, make you look foolish. I doubt that very much. His voice was warm. But if you do stumble, I'll catch you. Come. She took his hand. Let him lead her to the center of the hall. People moved aside immediately, creating space. His wolves followed, formed a circle around them again, protective and possessive. Alaric's hand went to her waist, large, warm, steady. His other hand held hers gently. Follow my lead. Step when I step. Feel the rhythm. The music began. He moved. She followed. Stumbled immediately, her feet tangling. He caught her without effort, stabilized her. Try again. She did. Focused on his movements, on the pressure of his hand guiding her on the beat of the music. Slowly, clumsily, at first, she found it. Started moving with him. Not gracefully, not like the court ladies who'd trained for this since childhood, but together. In sync. Better, he said quietly, his voice just for her. You're doing well. You're being kind. I'm being honest, a rarity for kings I know. She looked up at him, really looked. His face was hard-scarred, ancient, but his eyes were kind. And tired. And lonely. The recognition hit her. You're lonely, she said without thinking. Then froze, horrified. Your Majesty, forgive me. I shouldn't have. He didn't look offended, just sad. Yes, I am. 450 years is a long time to be alone. He paused. But I thought I hid it better. You do, for most people. Isla's voice was soft, but I recognize it. I've been lonely too, even before Donovan. I was always the quiet one, the forgettable one. You're not forgettable. You just met me. And yet I suspect I'll remember this night for the next century. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. The dance continued. Isla forgot about Donovan, about Celeste, about everything except this man holding her. This king who'd rescued her from humiliation, who talked to her like she mattered, who looked at her like she was visible. When the dance ended, they didn't separate immediately. Just stood there close until someone cleared their throat loudly nearby. They turned. Donovan stood a few feet away, his face tight. Your Majesty, forgive the interruption. Might I have a word with Lady Isla? Alaric's expression went cold. Dangerous. No. Donovan blinked clearly, not expecting such a flat refusal. Your Majesty, please. I have history with her. I need to speak with her. To make sure she's all right. Isla found her voice stronger than she'd expected. I have nothing to say to you, Donovan. Isla, be reasonable. He stepped closer. I just want to make sure you're truly well. That you're not being with respect to your Majesty. I don't want to see her hurt. She's vulnerable right now. I'm concerned that... That's enough. Alaric's voice dropped low, became deadly quiet. The lady said she has nothing to say to you. I suggest you return to your celebration before you insult me further by persisting. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a command wrapped in silk. Donovan went pale, bowed stiffly, retreated. Alaric turned to Isla and the coldness melted instantly. Are you well? Yes. She was trembling, but not from fear, from relief, from gratitude. Thank you. He's a fool. What? Leaving you for title and land, a transaction disguised as love. He's a fool. Isla smiled, really smiled for the first time all evening. Maybe he is. Alaric gestured toward the doors that led to the castle gardens. Would you like some air? It's stifling in here. She nodded, grateful beyond words. They left the hall, walked through torch-lit corridors out into the night. The gardens were beautiful in darkness, frost on the grass glittering like diamonds under a full moon, stars scattered across black sky like spilled silver, the air cold and clean and perfect. They found a stone bench near a fountain that had gone silent for winter. Sat. The wolves spread out around them, giving them space but remaining alert. Why did you really do this? Isla asked. It wasn't just to help me, was it? Alaric was quiet, staring up at the stars. Finally, I saw someone suffering. Someone who didn't deserve to suffer. And I had the power to ease it, if only for one evening. So I did. That's kind. Don't credit me with too much kindness. He looked at her. I also found the entire situation offensive. That man hurt you, then parades his new bride in front of you. It's cruel. I don't tolerate cruelty. He paused. And I wanted to talk to you. I've seen you in the archives for months now. Always working, never speaking, always alone. I was curious. Isla's breath caught. You noticed me before tonight. I notice everything in my castle. It's a habit born of necessity. He smiled slightly. But yes, I noticed you, particularly. Why didn't you ever speak to me? Because kings don't speak to scholars without reason. It wouldn't be proper. Would make people assume things create gossip, cause you trouble. I didn't want to make your life more difficult. She couldn't help it, she laughed. So instead you waited until the most dramatic possible moment to rescue me in front of 300 people. He had the grace to look chagrined. When you put it that way, it does seem counterproductive. They both laughed then. Real laughter, easy and comfortable despite the cold night and air. They talked for hours, about everything. He told her about immortality, about watching generations be born and grow and die, about the loneliness of never truly connecting because everyone leaves eventually. She told him about growing up the quiet child, about loving books more than people, about Donovan's betrayal, and how it had confirmed every insecurity she'd ever had about being invisible, forgettable. You're none of those things, Alaric said, and his voice was fierce. That man was too blind to see it. That's his failure, not yours. How do you know? Because you came tonight, faced your pain, didn't hide. That takes courage most people don't have. She looked at him, this ancient king who'd lived centuries, who'd seen everything, who was calling her strong. Thank you, for tonight, for this. He met her eyes. Can I see you again after tonight? Properly. Her breath caught. What? This conversation, this connection. It's not pretense anymore, not for me. I want to see you again, court you if you're willing. But you're a king, and I like scholars, especially ones who can debate the finer points of the Valdorian Accords with me. I don't understand. You could have anyone. In 450 years, you're the first person who's made me feel something other than duty and obligation. His voice was quiet, honest. You challenge me, interest me, make me want to know more. That's rare, precious. So yes, I want to see you again, if you'll allow it. Isla sat there processing. This was insane, impossible. Kings didn't court common scholars, but he was looking at her like she was the most important person in the kingdom, like her answer mattered more than anything. Yes, she whispered. Yes, you can see me again. Good. He stood, offered his hand. Come, I'll escort you home. But the feast, they'll notice. They won't miss me, and I'd rather see you safely home than spend another moment in that hall. He walked her through the castle, through the courtyard, to the edge of the castle district where she lived with her parents. Their modest home, comfortable, but not grand, warm, but not elegant. He didn't seem to care about any of that. At her door, he paused. Tomorrow, dinner in my private chambers. I'll send a carriage at sunset. Isla nodded, overwhelmed, grateful, terrified, excited, all at once. Tomorrow. He lifted her hand, pressed a kiss to her knuckles. Courtly, respectful, but with an intimacy that made her breath catch. Until tomorrow, Isla Thorne. She watched him walk away, his wolves trailing after him, disappearing into shadows. Stood there for long minutes, wondering if she'd dreamed the entire night. But the warmth of his hand on hers was real. The kiss on her knuckles was real. Tomorrow was real. She went inside, found her parents still awake, waiting. Her mother, Helena, stood immediately when she saw Isla's face. Sweetheart, how was it? Are you all right? We've been so worried. Isla smiled, a real smile, the first genuine smile she'd worn in 6 months. I'm fine, Mama, more than fine. I think, I think everything just changed. Her father Thomas came to her, took her hands in his rough, calloused carpenter's hands. Tell us. So she did, told them everything, the humiliation, yes, but then Alaric's appearance, the rescue, the conversation, the dance, the garden, the invitation for tomorrow. They listened, eyes growing wider with each detail. When she finished, her mother was crying, happy tears. My daughter, my brilliant, quiet daughter. He's a good man, this king, her father asked, searching her face. I think so, Papa. I think he sees me, really sees me. Not what I lack, but who I am. Thomas nodded slowly. Then that's all that matters. If he treats you right, if he values you properly, then I don't care if he's king or commoner. Helena touched Isla's face gently. You deserve to be seen, my love. You always did. That night, Isla lay in her small room, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment, every word, every look. The way Alaric's hand had felt on her waist during the dance, the kindness in his golden eyes, the loneliness she'd recognized because she wore it too. Tomorrow she'd see him again. Tomorrow everything might change again. But for tonight, for this one perfect night, she'd been visible. She'd mattered. She'd been chosen. Not because she was noble or beautiful or anything other than exactly who she'd always been. A scholar, a translator, a quiet woman who loved books and old languages in truth. And somehow, impossibly, that had been enough. She fell asleep smiling, the memory of a king's kindness wrapped around her like armor against all the hurt that had come before. Tomorrow was waiting, and for the first time in 6 months, Isla Thorne couldn't wait to see what it would bring. The morning after the wedding feast, Isla woke to sunlight streaming through her window and certainty blooming in her chest. Last night had happened. All of it. When she dressed and went downstairs, her mother was already at the loom, and the smile on Helena's face confirmed it. The hope in her eyes was real. And when Isla touched her own lips, she could still feel the ghost of where Alaric had kissed her knuckles. She walked to the castle through streets already busy with morning commerce, bakers pulling fresh bread from ovens, merchants opening shops, children running errands. The world looked the same as yesterday. But Isla felt different, like something inside her had shifted. Realigned, found a new center. The royal archives were in the lower levels of Castle Thornhaven. Cool stone rooms that smelled of parchment and dust, and history shelves stretching from floor to ceiling. Her workspace was a small desk near a window. Ink bottles, quills, parchment, both blank and covered in her neat script, current projects spread across the scarred wooden surface. She settled into her chair, pulled out the prophecy collection she'd been working on, tried to focus. Couldn't. Her mind kept returning to last night, to golden eyes watching her with interest, to a deep voice saying, "You're not forgettable," to the feeling of being held during a dance of mattering. Around midday, when she'd read the same line 7 times without comprehending it, a page appeared at her desk. Young, maybe 14, breathless with excitement. Lady Isla. I'm just Isla, but yes. Message from His Majesty. The boy held out a sealed letter, the royal seal pressed in red wax, a wolf's head with a crown. Isla's hands trembled slightly as she broke the seal, unfolded the parchment, read the words written in a strong, elegant hand. Dinner tonight, sunset, my private chambers. A carriage will collect you at your home. I look forward to continuing our conversation. No formality needed. Just bring yourself. Alaric, not His Majesty, not King Alaric Greymane, just Alaric, like they were equals, like this was normal. She looked up at the page. Tell His Majesty I accept with gratitude. The boy grinned, bowed awkwardly, and ran off. Isla sat there holding the letter, staring at words that proved last night wasn't fantasy. This was real. This was happening. She was still sitting there, letter in hand, when footsteps approached. She looked up. Donovan stood at her desk, her stomach clenched. What are you doing here? Isla, please, just hear me out. One conversation. No, Donovan. We don't, please. His voice cracked slightly. 5 minutes. That's all I ask. She set down the letter, carefully faced him, the man she'd planned to marry. He looked tired, dark circles under his eyes, his expensive doublet slightly rumpled. Fine, talk. He pulled up a stool, sat across from her. Couldn't quite meet her eyes. What happened last night? With the king. Isla, you need to be careful. Careful of what? He's using you to amuse himself. Kings don't court commoners. Not seriously. They dally, they play, but they always return to their own kind. He'll toy with you, then discard you, and you'll be hurt far worse than... He stopped. Worse than you hurt me. Isla's voice was cold. Say it, Donovan. I'm trying to protect you. Why do you care? You made your choice. You chose Celeste. You chose nobility and connections and a path to higher things. You don't get to protect me now. I still care about you. His voice was urgent. You were important to me. I don't want to see you destroyed by someone who sees you as a novelty. Isla stood, looked down at him. Get out. Isla, I mean it. Get out and don't come back. If you approach me again, I'll have palace guards remove you. Do you understand? He stared at her, shocked. She'd never spoken to him like this before. Finally, he left, retreated without another word. Isla sat back down, trembling slightly. Not from fear, from something like triumph. She'd drawn a line, defended herself, refused to let him define her choices. It felt good. It felt powerful. She picked up Alaric's letter, again traced the words with one finger. I look forward to continuing our conversation. Whatever came of this, whether Donovan was right and it ended in heartbreak, or whether something genuine was beginning, it was hers to choose. Her risk to take. Her life to live. She went back to work with new focus. She had dinner to prepare for. The royal carriage arrived at sunset. Black lacquered wood with silver trim, the royal wolf emblem on the doors. Neighbors came out to stare as Isla emerged wearing her best gown, the same green dress from last night, the only truly fine thing she owned. Her mother had helped with her hair, braiding it simply and weaving in small white flowers. You look beautiful, Helena had whispered. Remember who you are. Don't let anyone make you small. Thomas had just hugged her tight, this carpenter, with calloused hands who'd built portions of a castle. Come home safe, that's all we ask. Now Isla climbed into the carriage, settled onto velvet cushions, and watched her street disappear as they rolled toward the castle. The carriage took her to the royal wing quarters of polished marble tapestries with Fortune's guards in ceremonial armor. They stopped at a door flanked by two soldiers who opened it without question when they saw her. Inside was not what Isla expected. Not a throne room or formal dining hall. A sitting room comfortable and lived in. Bookshelves lining the walls, she recognized some titles. A fireplace with actual flames, a table set for two, with simple dishes, and standing by the window backlit by the last rays of sunset, Alaric. He'd changed from his ceremonial armor, wore a simple dark tunic and trousers. No crown, just him. He turned when she entered, and his smile was genuine. You came. I wasn't certain you would. Did you think I wouldn't? I thought after last night, after the spectacle of it, you might have second thoughts. She walked further in. The guards closed the door behind her, leaving them alone. Well, not quite alone, an older woman sat in a corner working on embroidery. Chaperone, maintaining propriety. I had many thoughts, Isla admitted, but none of them were about not coming. Good, he gestured to the table. Please sit. Dinner is simple, I hope you don't mind. I find elaborate meals tedious when I actually want to talk to someone. They sat. He poured wine himself, no servants hovering. Served her roasted chicken, root vegetables, fresh bread. Simple food meant for conversation rather than show. They ate and talked. About her work, he asked detailed questions about the prophecy translations. About history, he shared first-hand accounts of events she'd only read about. About books they'd both read, interpretations they agreed or disagreed on. An hour passed like minutes, 2 hours. The chaperone in the corner nodded off over her embroidery. Tell me about your family, Alaric said. Your parents. I know your father is a carpenter, your mother a weaver, but who are they beyond their trades? Isla smiled, thinking of home. Papa is quiet like me, finds peace in wood and creation. He talks to the wood sometimes when he thinks no one's listening. Says it tells him what it wants to become. She paused. Mama is fierce, in a quiet way. She taught me that being soft doesn't mean being weak, that you can be gentle and still have steel in your spine. She sounds formidable. She is, they both are. They gave me everything they could, education, safety, love. I never felt poor even though we weren't wealthy. Alaric was quiet for a moment. You're lucky to have that foundation. You don't have that? I'm a king. Love is always conditional, always tied to what I can provide, what protection I offer, what power I represent. He looked at her. It's been a long time since someone valued me for something other than what I am. I don't know what you are, Isla said honestly. I know you're king. I know you're like an immortal powerful. But I don't know you, not yet. What do you want to know? Everything. But we have time for that. She paused. Tell me one thing that's true. One thing that's just you, not the king. He considered firelight playing across his face. I'm afraid. Of what? Of outliving everything that matters. Of the loneliness that comes from watching everyone you care about age and die while you remain. He met her eyes. Of finding something precious and losing it as I've lost everything else. The honesty in his voice made her chest ache. Have you lost many people? Hundreds. Friends, companions, lovers. I watched them grow old, watched them fade. Each one took a piece of me with them. His voice grew softer. Eventually, I stopped letting people close. Easier to be alone than to grieve again and again. But you're letting me close. Yes. Why? Because in 450 years, you're the first person who made me think the risk might be worth it. Silence settled between them, heavy with possibility and fear. Finally, Isla said, I'm afraid too. Of me, of not being enough, of being a phase you grow tired of everyone being right when they say a king and a scholar from craftsman stock don't belong together. Alaric reached across the table, took her hand. His was large, warm, scarred from centuries of battles. Let me tell you what I see. Someone brilliant who solves problems others can't. Someone kind who forgave people who hurt her. Someone brave who walked into her worst nightmare last night and survived it with dignity. Isla felt tears threaten. Blinked them back. You barely know me. Then let me know you. That's what courtship is, isn't it? Learning each other, deciding if what we feel is real or just possibility. And if it's real, then we'll face whatever comes together. They talked until late, until the chaperone woke with a start and informed them it was well past appropriate hours. Alaric walked Isla to the carriage, handed her in personally. Tomorrow, he asked, a walk in the gardens. I'll arrange for proper chaperone. Dame Winifred Ashcroft, she's one of my most trusted advisors. Tomorrow, Isla agreed. She rode home in darkness, watching stars through the carriage window, feeling like she was floating. Dame Winifred Ashcroft was 62 years old, steel gray hair pulled back in a severe bun, sharp eyes that missed nothing, and a spine straight as a sword blade. She'd served the royal household for 30 years. She suffered no nonsense, tolerated no foolishness, and had seen enough court scandals to be permanently unimpressed by drama. When she was assigned as Isla's chaperone and guide to court life, her first words were blunt. So, you're the scholar who caught our king's eye. They were in the castle gardens, walking gravel paths between winter-dormant flower beds. Alaric walked ahead with his wolves, giving them space. I don't know that I caught anything, Isla said carefully. We're just talking. Winifred snorted. Child, I've been watching courtship dances for 3 decades. This isn't just talking. The king hasn't shown interest in anyone for 50 years. Now suddenly he's arranging daily meetings with a common scholar. That's not nothing. What is it then? Winifred stopped walking, turned to face Isla fully. It's hope. For him, possibly disaster for you, probably both. She softened slightly. But if you're going to do this, you need to do it right, which means you need to learn things you don't currently know. Like what? Court etiquette, which fork to use at formal dinners, how to address different ranks of nobility, when to curtsy and when to stand your ground, how to navigate the social warfare that passes for conversation among nobles. Winifred paused. How to be a queen, basically. Because that's what this is leading toward. Isla's breath caught. I can't be a queen. Why not too common? Winifred's voice was sharp. I was a merchant's daughter. My father sold fabric. When I married a minor knight and entered court life, they treated me like I was tracking mud on expensive carpets. But I learned, proved myself, rose through merit, not blood. She stepped closer. You have something far more valuable than noble blood. You have a brain, and kindness, and integrity. Those make a better queen than lineage ever could. But the court will never accept. The court accepts what the king decrees. Your job isn't to make them love you. Your job is to be worthy of the position, to earn respect through action, not breeding. Winifred's voice gentled, and to never, ever apologize for existing. You belong where you choose to stand. Remember that. Over the following weeks, Winifred became more than chaperone, became teacher, advisor, and something like the mother figure Isla had never had in court circles. She corrected Isla's posture, taught her the intricate dance of noble conversation, explained the unspoken rules of power and hierarchy. But more than that, she gave Isla confidence, reminded her that intelligence was power, that knowing languages dead nobles couldn't read made her valuable. Let them think you're just a pretty scholar the king is dallying with, Winifred advised, then prove them wrong by being indispensable. The courtship progressed, carefully, properly, always chaperoned. Garden walks in the late afternoon, dinners in Alaric's chambers with Winifred present, visits to the archives where he'd watch Isla work fascinated. The wolves became constants, all 5 of them massive and protective. Shadowfang the Alpha tested her constantly at first, blocked her path, forced her to ask permission to pass. She learned to speak to him as an equal, not a pet, to request rather than command. Eventually he accepted her presence, even began to anticipate her movements. Frostbite was gentle despite his size. would rest his massive head on Isla's lap when she worked seeking attention she was happy to give. She'd scratch behind his ears while translating, and he'd sigh contentedly. Emberclaw was the youngest at 60 years, still playful. He stole her gloves, her scarves, once even a manuscript. She had to chase him through the gardens while Alaric laughed. When she finally caught him, she wasn't angry, just amused. And Emberclaw became devoted after that, bringing her things he thought she'd like. Styx Flowers, once a very confused cat that he carried gently in his jaws. Stormhowl was restless, always pacing. He needed purpose. Isla started sending him with messages, sealed letters to deliver. Having a job calmed him. He took his duties seriously, would sit patiently waiting for responses. Sagewind was the wisest, the observer. He watched everything, missed nothing. When danger approached, even subtle social danger, Sagewind knew first, would alert the others with a quiet growl. Together, the five wolves became her protection, her companions, her family. Court members learned quickly to reach Isla. They had to get past 5 massive predators first. Most chose courtesy, but not everyone. Lady Octavia Ravenswood was 200 years old and beautiful in the way immortals could be when they had centuries to perfect themselves. Tall, elegant, with hair like spun platinum and eyes the color of winter ice. She was minor nobility, with lands north of the capital, and she'd been positioning herself as a potential queen for 80 years. She'd pursued Alaric subtly, persistently. Made herself useful on councils, attended every social function, presented herself as the obvious choice. Noble, experienced, already immortal. He'd never shown interest. Had been polite, respectful, but never romantic. And now this common scholar, barely 26, had captured his attention in a single evening. Octavia's campaign against Isla was subtle at first. Comments at social gatherings about appropriate matches. Questions about whether a craftsman's daughter could handle the complexities of statecraft. The court divided. Older nobles supported Octavia tradition, demanded noble matches. Younger nobles were intrigued by the romance of it. The common people, when word spread, were entirely on Isla's side. 3 weeks into the courtship, Octavia confronted Isla directly. It was in the castle library where Isla often worked. Octavia appeared with 2 ladies-in-waiting, swept in like winter wind. "Scholar Isla, how fortunate to find you. I've been hoping for a private word." Isla looked up from her translation. Shadowfang, resting beside her desk, rose to his feet, a low growl building in his throat. "Peace, Shadowfang." Isla stood. "Lady Octavia, how may I help you?" "By being realistic." Octavia's voice was cold but not cruel. Direct. "You're playing a dangerous game. Kings dally with commoners, always have. But they marry their own kind. You're setting yourself up for heartbreak. That's my risk to take. It's not just your risk. When he inevitably tires of you, when he finally accepts he needs a proper queen, the damage will be done. To you, yes. But also to the stability of the kingdom. The court is divided. Factions are forming. All because you don't know your place." Isla kept her voice level. "My place is where the king invites me to stand. If you have concerns about his choices, take them to him." "I have. He won't listen. He's infatuated." Octavia stepped closer. "I don't hate you, Isla. I don't even blame you. You're young, you were hurt," he offered comfort. "It's understandable, but love isn't enough. Ruling requires experience, connections, understanding of power that takes decades to develop. Can you honestly say you're ready for that?" "No," Isla said honestly. "I'm not ready, but I'm learning. And if Alaric believes I can grow into the role, then I'll prove him right or die trying." Octavia studied her for a long moment. "You're braver than I expected. Or more foolish. I haven't decided which. Does it matter?" "Perhaps not." Octavia turned to leave, then paused. "Be worthy of him if nothing else. He's been alone long enough. If you're going to disrupt centuries of tradition, at least make it worth his while." She left. Isla sat back down, hands trembling slightly. Shadowfang pressed against her leg, offering silent support. The prophecy discovery came 6 weeks into courtship on a cold afternoon when frost painted patterns on the archive windows. Isla was cataloging old manuscripts, a routine task she found meditative. She opened one box that had been mislabeled. Instead of tax records, it held a single ancient text bound in cracked leather. She pulled it out carefully. The leather was so old it flaked at her touch. She opened it gently. Ancient Lycian script. Very old. She recognized the hand. This was written by Seer Althea, the legendary prophet whose predictions had shaped kingdom policy 300 years ago. Isla's hands trembled as she began to read. The text was a collection of prophecies. But near the end, one made her freeze. When darkness threatens and the deathless king stands alone, his salvation comes not from houses of gold, but from the house of knowledge. She who speaks tongues of old shall break his solitude eternal. Together, they forge new destiny written in stars themselves. When scholar speaks binding vow beneath heaven's light, two become one path, and kingdom finds wisdom it has long lacked. Isla read it 3 times. 4. Her heart pounded. This prophecy described them. Exactly. The deathless King Alaric. House of Knowledge, the archives. She who speaks old tongues, she was one of 3 people alive who could read ancient Lycian fluently. Kingdom finds wisdom it lack. What did that mean? She stood so fast her chair toppled, gathered the manuscript carefully, wrapped it in protective cloth. Ran through the castle corridors, Shadowfang and Frostbite racing beside her, sensing her urgency. She burst into a council meeting. Didn't knock, didn't wait for permission. Just rushed in with the manuscript clutched to her chest. 12 council members looked up, scandalized. Alaric rose from his seat at the head of the table, concerned. Isla, what's wrong? I found something, Your Majesty. Council members, I'm sorry for interrupting, but I found something. A prophecy. It's about... She stopped, suddenly aware of 12 pairs of eyes watching her. It's important. May I show you, Safino? Alaric gestured. Please. She approached, laid the manuscript on the table, opened it to the prophecy. This is authentic Althea text, 300 years old. I can verify the ink, the parchment, the script. It's genuine, and it describes, she pointed. May I translate? Please, Alaric said, but his voice was different now, intent. She read the ancient Lycian aloud, then translated it to common tongue. The words fell into the council chamber like stones into still water. When she finished, silence stretched. Finally, Archon Silas Thornwick, the elderly head scholar, spoke. Let me see that. Isla handed it to him. He examined it closely, pulled out a magnifying glass, studied the script. Minutes passed, everyone waited. It's genuine, he said finally. Althea's hand. I'd stake my reputation on it. The parchment is correct, period. The ink composition matches other verified Althea texts. This is real. And the prophecy, asked Chancellor Morris, younger man ambitious. You expect us to believe this conveniently appears just as the king is courting a commoner. I expect you to verify it, Isla said firmly. Test the parchment. Carbon dating, magical authentication if needed. Cross-reference with other Althea prophecies. Do every test available. I want this verified beyond any doubt. Alaric smiled slightly, proud of her. Agreed, he said. We verify completely. But if it is authentic, and Archon Silas rarely makes mistakes, then this prophecy has implications. It validates the courtship, Winifred said from the door where she'd followed Isla. If their union was foretold 300 years ago, who are we to argue with fate? The council erupted in debate, some excited, some skeptical, some angry. But through it all, Alaric watched Isla with something like wonder in his golden eyes. The verification took a week. Every test Isla had suggested, plus several more. Magical authentication by 3 independent mages. Carbon dating, comparing ink composition to verified Althea texts, cross-referencing prophecy style and language. Every test came back positive, genuine, authentic, 300 years old, written by Seer Althea herself. When the results were presented to the full court in a public assembly, Lady Octavia stood challenged directly. This is too convenient. She works in the archives. She has access she could have forged. With 300-year-old parchment. Archon Silas cut her off. With ink composition, we no longer make with Althea's exact script style, including variations scholars didn't know about, until comparing this to newly discovered text. No, this isn't forgery. This is genuine. Octavia sat down, face pale. Isla stood before the court, feeling 300 pairs of eyes on her. Whispers rippled through the crowd. May I speak? She asked. Alaric nodded. Please. I understand skepticism. I was skeptical myself when I found this. That's why I demanded verification, insisted on every possible test. Because I needed to know this was real, not just convenient. She took a breath. I'm a scholar. My life's work is finding truth in ancient texts. I would never forge something, never compromise my integrity for personal gain. This prophecy is real. What we do with that information is up to all of us, but the text itself is genuine. A voice from the crowd, older woman, common clothes, called out. What does it mean, the prophecy that the kingdom finds wisdom? Isla turned toward the voice. I'm still working on that part. The final phrase is complex, but I think it means that what I bring to the crown isn't gold or land or armies. It's knowledge, education, a different perspective, the wisdom of someone who sees power from the outside. Another voice, younger man, you're saying you're prophesied to be queen. I'm saying that if I become queen, it was written in the stars 3 centuries before I was born. Which means it's not about me being special, it's about the role, the wisdom that role needs right now. And maybe that's why the prophecy led me to the king. The crowd murmured, some nodding, some still skeptical. But the tide was turning. Alaric stood. The prophecy is verified. What remains is choice, mine and Isla's. Prophecy shows a path, but we still have to choose to walk it. He looked at her. I choose to keep walking, if you'll walk with me. I will, Isla said simply. The opposition didn't disappear, but it fractured. The prophecy gave legitimacy that even traditionalists couldn't fully dismiss. 2 weeks later, crisis arrived from the eastern border. Kingdom of Almeria, longtime neighbor and occasional rival, mobilized troops, sent ultimatums, cede control of the Thorn Pass trade route within 72 hours or face military action. The council convened an emergency session. Maps spread across the Great Table showing troop positions, defensive fortifications. We have no legal precedent, Chancellor Morris said, frustrated. Every treaty we have with Almeria is either expired or ambiguous on this point. If we refuse their demand, we're choosing war. Then we prepare for war, said General Rothgar, grizzled veteran. We don't cede territory to threats. Of course, war costs lives, Alaric said quietly. Soldiers, yes, but also civilians. Farmlands destroyed, trade disrupted, children losing parents. War should be absolute last resort. But if we have no legal standing, Morris began. Then we find legal standing, Alaric interrupted. We have 72 hours. Use them. Search every treaty, every agreement, every historical document we have. We're not going to war because we couldn't read our own history. The council dispersed to search records. Isla watched them go, then approached Alaric quietly. The archives. The old treaties are there. Let me help. You have other work. Nothing more important than this. I know those archives better than anyone. If there's something there, I'll find it. He studied her face, then nodded. Thank you. She went to the archives, pulled every treaty document they had with Almeria, hundreds of pages, dozens of agreements, spanning 400 years. She worked through the night, candles burning down Shadowfang and Sagewind, keeping watch beside her. Dawn came. No answer. She'd found trade agreements, peace accords, marriage arrangements, but nothing about Thornpass specifically. She kept searching, pulled documents from earlier periods, before Almeria was even called Almeria. Old kingdom names, ancient territorial disputes. Second highest, still nothing. Her eyes burned from reading by candlelight. Winifred brought food, insisted she eat. She did mechanically, then returned to the manuscripts. 48 hours had passed. 24 hours remained. She was ready to give up when Sagewind did something strange. He padded over to a restricted section, high shelves where the most ancient documents were kept. Stood on his hind legs, massive paws on the shelf, and knocked a leather portfolio to the floor. Isla scrambled to prevent damage, caught it before it hit the ground. Opened it. Inside were documents marked with the seal she barely recognized, the old kingdom of Valdris before the Greymane dynasty. And there on parchment, so old it was almost transparent, she found it. The Treaty of Twin Rivers, 400 years old, signed between Valdris and the Kingdom of Eastmarch, which had later been absorbed into what became Almeria. The treaty established borders, trade routes, fishing rights, and territorial claims. And in the territorial claims section, written in Old Valdrin script that Iella could read, was the relevant passage. Eastmarch, predecessor of Almeria, had explicitly ceded all claims to the Thornpass region in perpetuity in exchange for exclusive fishing rights in the Twin Rivers. The agreement was binding on any successor kingdoms. Almeria was the successor kingdom to Eastmarch, which meant they'd already signed away their rights to Thornpass. 400 years ago, they had no legal standing whatsoever. Isla read it 3 times to be certain. Checked cross-references, verified the seals, confirmed this was genuine and binding. Then she ran. 3 hours before the deadline, she burst into the war room where Alaric and his council were making final preparations for military mobilization. Stop! She was breathless, clutching the portfolio. Stop! I found it! Everyone turned. Alaric crossed to her in 3 long strides. Found what? Legal precedent. The Treaty of Twin Rivers, 400 years old. Almeria's predecessor kingdom explicitly ceded all rights to Thornpass. She laid the portfolio on the table, opened it. It's in Old Valdrin. Let me translate. She read the passage aloud in Old Valdrin first, then translated to common tongue. Every word precise, every meaning clear. When she finished, the room was silent. Archon Silas examined the document. It's genuine. I remember cataloging this decades ago, but I couldn't read the language. I never knew what it said. And it's binding, Alaric asked. Completely. Treaties include successor clause. Any kingdom that absorbs territory assumes all agreements of the previous kingdom. Almeria inherited Eastmarch's treaties. They signed away these rights centuries ago. Chancellor Morris was already writing. We'll send this immediately. With translation, with authentication. Give them the choice, honor the agreement, or face war knowing they're in the wrong. The message was sent by fastest rider. Copy of the treaty, Isla's translation. Archon Silas's authentication. Arrived at Almeria's capital with 6 hours to spare on the ultimatum. 4 hours later, response came. Almeria's king apologized. Treaty was honored. Troops withdrawn. Crisis averted. No battle, no war, no lives lost. Because a scholar knew how to read a dead language and had the stubbornness to search through 400 years of documents to find the truth. The celebration that evening was jubilant, relief and joy and pride. Isla stood in the great hall exhausted but happy, accepting congratulations from nobles who'd dismissed her weeks ago, watching common soldiers drink and laugh instead of marching to possible death. Alaric appeared beside her. Walk with me. They went to the gardens, wolves trailing. The night was cold, stars brilliant in a clear sky. They found the same bench where they'd sat after the wedding feast when this had all begun. You saved the kingdom, Miriam, Alaric said quietly. I found a document. You prevented a war. You saved hundreds, maybe thousands of lives, with knowledge, with stubbornness and brilliance and refusing to give up. He turned to face her fully. That's what that prophecy meant. The wisdom the kingdom needed. You. Isla looked at him. This ancient king who'd lived centuries, who'd seen everything, who was looking at her like she'd hung the stars currently shining overhead. Isla Thorne, he said and dropped to one knee. Right there, in the garden. In public view where anyone walking past could see. A king on his knee before a craftsman's daughter. What are you, marry me? His voice was steady. Not because prophecy said so. Not because you're useful, though you are. Marry me because I love you. Because you challenge me and surprise me and make me want to be better than I am. Because in 450 years, you're the first person who made me feel truly alive again. He pulled a ring from his pocket. Simple silver, single sapphire runes engraved inside that she recognized as ancient Lycian. She read them. Knowledge is strength. Love is power. I'm asking you to be my queen, not just in title, but in truth. Full council vote, full authority, equal partnership in ruling this kingdom. Be my wife, be my partner, be the wisdom this crown needs. Isla's eyes filled with tears, happy tears. Yes, she whispered. Yes, absolutely yes. He slid the ring on her finger. Stood, pulled her into an embrace, and she fit perfectly against him. This impossible match that prophecy had predicted and choice had made real. From the castle, someone had seen. A cheer went up, then another. The news spread like wildfire. The king proposed. The scholar said yes. By the time they returned to the hall, the entire castle knew. The celebration doubled, tripled. This wasn't just relief from war. This was joy at a love story 3 centuries in the making. Isla found Winifred in the crowd. The older woman pulled her into a fierce hug. Well done, girl. You earned this. Did I? You saved a kingdom from war. You stood up to opposition with grace. You never compromised who you are. Yes, you earned it. Octavia appeared, surprising them both. She looked at Isla for a long moment, then inclined her head, not quite a bow, but respect. Be worthy of it, she said quietly. Same words as before, but different tone. Not threat. Blessing. That's all any of us can ask. Isla watched her go, understanding blooming. Octavia wasn't an enemy, just someone who'd wanted the same thing and hadn't been chosen. That pain was real. But Octavia was choosing grace anyway. That night, Isla stood on a balcony overlooking the castle grounds, ring gleaming on her finger, Alaric beside her, wolves resting nearby. Below, people celebrated not just nobles, but common folk who'd been allowed into the outer courtyards. Are you ready for this? Alaric asked. Really ready. It's not going to be easy. There will always be people who think you don't belong. I'm not ready, Isla admitted, but I will be, and I have help. She looked at him. I have you. I have Winifred. I have 5 massive wolves who are extremely protective. I'll figure out the rest as I go. That's all any of us can do. They stood together, watching their kingdom celebrate, and Isla thought about that night 2 months ago. Sitting alone at a wedding, drowning in humiliation and pain, certain her life was over. She'd had no idea it was just beginning, that the worst night of her life would open a door to the best chapter. That being broken open would let light in. That sometimes you had to fall apart to discover what you were really made of. And standing here now, engaged to a king, having saved hundreds of lives with nothing but knowledge and determination, Isla Thorne understood something profound. She'd been enough all along. She just needed someone to see it before she could see it herself. Tomorrow they'd plan a wedding. Tomorrow they'd face whatever opposition remained. Tomorrow she'd begin learning how to be a queen. But tonight she'd just stand here, beloved and valued and seen. Finally, completely, perfectly seen. The morning after Alaric's proposal, Isla woke with a ring on her finger and the weight of reality settling over her shoulders. She sat up in her small bed, looked at the silver band with its sapphire gleaming in morning sun, and let herself feel the fear. Queen. She was going to be queen. 26 years old, daughter of a carpenter and a weaver. And now she'd wear a crown, sit on a throne, make choices that could save or destroy lives. The panic was there pressing against her ribs, but she didn't run from it, just sat with it breathing. She dressed, went downstairs. Her parents were already awake, Thomas at his workbench, Helena at her loom. They looked up when she entered, saw her face, and knew immediately. Sit down, Helena said gently. I'll make tea. Isla sat. Her father came in from the workshop wood shavings, still clinging to his leather apron, and took the chair across from her. Said nothing, just waited. Helena brought tea, sat beside Thomas, and they both watched their daughter with patient love. I'm scared, Isla whispered finally. I don't know how to be a queen. I'm going to make mistakes. Thomas reached across, took her hands in his calloused ones. Do you remember when you were 8, you wanted to learn ancient lichen? Said it was too hard, you'd never understand it. Papa, you cried, said you wanted to quit, but your mother said something. Do you remember what? Isla shook her head. Helena spoke, her voice warm. I said being scared doesn't mean you can't do it. It means you care enough to want to do it well. And then what happened? Thomas asked. I kept studying. And now you're one of 3 people in the kingdom who can read it fluently. You saved us from war with that knowledge. He squeezed her hands gently. You didn't know how to do it when you started, but you learned. You always learn. That's who you are. But this is different. This is bigger. Bigger, more important, more people watching. Helena moved to sit beside Isla, wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Yes, but you're not alone in this. You have Alaric, who chose you knowing exactly who you are. You have Dame Winifred. You have us who will always love you whether you wear a crown or not. What if I'm not strong enough? Sweetheart, Thomas's voice was firm. You walked into that wedding feast alone, survived public humiliation, found the courage to accept a king's courtship despite everyone saying you didn't belong. Worked 48 hours straight to find a document that saved thousands of lives. You're already stronger than you think. Isla looked at her parents, these people who'd given her everything, who'd never made her feel small even when the world did. I'm scared I'll fail you. You already succeeded. Helena kissed her forehead. You stayed true to yourself. That's all we ever wanted. The rest is just details. The panic didn't disappear entirely, but it loosened, became something manageable. Thank you, Isla said quietly, for always seeing me. That's what parents do, Thomas said simply. When Isla arrived at the castle later that morning, Alaric was waiting in the council chamber. He dismissed his advisors when he saw her, crossed to her immediately. How are you? Terrified, determined, both at once, he smiled. That sounds about right. He took her hands. We need to set a date for the wedding, 3 months from today. Gives us 12 weeks to prepare. Is that enough time? For what, the ceremony? Or for me to figure out how to be a queen? Both, neither. We'll figure it out together. He squeezed her hands gently. 3 months, 12 weeks. Then you'll be my wife and my partner in all things. Isla nodded. 3 months. We can do this. We can do this, he agreed. Week 1 of 12, initial preparations. Wedding planning began. Guest lists, seating arrangements, ceremony details. Isla worked with Winifred, daily learning protocol, practicing posture, studying the intricate dance of court politics. Dame Winifred was relentless but kind. You're marrying into responsibility, she reminded Isla constantly. But you're also marrying a man who loves you. Don't forget that part in all the preparation. Week 2, the wolves became even more protective. Shadowfang wouldn't let Isla walk anywhere without escort. Emberclaw brought her flowers daily. Where he found them in late autumn was a mystery. The 5 of them formed a constant barrier between her and the world. Isla found comfort in their presence. They didn't judge her, didn't question her worthiness, just protected her fiercely and loved her without condition. Week 3, Lady Octavia requested a private meeting with Isla. No witnesses, no chaperones beyond the wolves. They met in a small sitting room in the castle's east wing. Octavia looked different, less polished, more human, tired around the eyes. Thank you for seeing me, Octavia said quietly. You asked. I'm not going to refuse communication. Octavia smiled slightly. Most would, after I campaigned against you. She took a breath. I owe you honesty. All right. I loved Alaric for 80 years. Octavia's voice was steady, but pain threaded through it. Not the king, the man. I saw him in moments no one else did, when he was tired, when he was lonely, when he laughed at something genuinely funny instead of diplomatically. I saw him and I loved him, and I waited for him to see me the same way. She looked at her hands. He never did. Oh, he respected me, valued my counsel. But romance loved never, and I told myself it was timing. That if I just waited long enough, proved myself valuable enough, he'd eventually love me back. Lady Octavia, let me finish. Octavia looked up. Then you appeared. Common scholar, no training, no preparation. And in one evening, you captured something I couldn't earn in 80 years. Do you know how that feels? To realize that everything you are, your beauty, your nobility, your centuries of experience, isn't what someone wants. Isla's throat tightened. Yes, I do know. That's exactly how I felt when Donovan chose Celeste. Octavia blinked. Oh, you're not angry I'm common. You're angry fate chose me despite your devotion. I understand that. It's the same anger I felt. The same hurt. Silence stretched between them. Then Octavia laughed, sad, genuine. We're not so different, Orin. Both rejected by men we loved. Both chosen by others. Except your story has a happy ending. I'm sorry you don't have the same. Don't be. Octavia stood, smoothed her skirts. I'm making my peace with it. Not because I'm noble, but because holding anger only hurts me. Alaric made his choice. You made yours. The only choice I have left is how I respond. And how will you respond? By being useful. I'm good at statecraft, at managing noble politics. If you'll accept my help, I'll give it. Not for Alaric, he doesn't need me, but for the kingdom, and maybe for you because you'll need all the allies you can get. Isla studied her, saw sincerity beneath the pain. I'd welcome your help, truly. Then you have it. Octavia moved toward the door, paused. One more thing. Be worthy of what I wanted but couldn't have. That's not a threat. It's a request from someone who loved him long before you existed. I'll do my best. That's all any of us can do. After she left, Isla sat alone with her thoughts. Octavia wasn't an enemy, just another woman trying to navigate disappointment with grace. And it reminded Isla that pain was universal. Noble or common, everyone hurt the same way. The difference was in what you did with it. Let it make you bitter, or let it make you kinder. Isla chose kindness. Week 8, Donovan came to the archives. Isla saw him approaching, tensed for confrontation. But he looked different, humbler, less polished. I know you said not to come back, he began, but I'm leaving tomorrow. Going to my father's Eastern trade post for a year. I needed to speak to you before I left. Donovan, please just listen. Then I'll leave and you'll never have to see me again if you don't want to. Isla nodded slowly. He sat not across from her, but at an angle less confrontational. I need to apologize, really apologize. I hurt you, deeply, and my reasons don't excuse it. You love Celeste. I thought I did. Maybe I did, but that's not why I chose her. He met her eyes. I chose her because I was weak, because my father pressured me, told me I needed noble connections, because Celeste offered an easy path to the life I'd been raised to want. He looked down at his hands. You challenged me, made me think, made me question whether the life I'd planned was actually worth living. And instead of being grateful for that, I was scared. So I chose the easier path, chose comfort over courage. Why are you telling me this now? Because watching you these past months, seeing you face opposition with grace, save the kingdom, with your intelligence, refuse to let anyone make you small, made me realize I chose wrong. Not because you're going to be queen, because you were always brave and I was always a coward. He stood. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just needed you to know that ending our betrothal wasn't your failure. It was mine. You were always enough. I just wasn't man enough to see it. Isla watched him, saw genuine regret, genuine growth. How's Celeste? Good. Happy, I think. We're finding our way together. She's kinder than I deserve. She knows I married her for wrong reasons, and she's decided to love me anyway. I'm trying to be worth that. Then be worth it. Really be worth it. Love her properly. I'm trying. He moved toward the door to stop. You're going to be an extraordinary queen. The kingdom is lucky to have you. I think so too, Isla said simply. Donovan smiled, sad but genuine. Good, that's good. He left. Isla sat for a long time processing. Forgiveness wasn't always about the other person deserving it. Sometimes it was about freeing yourself from carrying their mistakes. She forgave Donovan. Not because he'd earned it, but because holding grudges was exhausting, and she had better things to do with her energy. She had a kingdom to learn how to help rule. Week 10. The council presented Isla with an ancient tradition, Every prospective queen must present a wisdom gift to the kingdom, something that demonstrated what she would bring to the crown beyond marriage. Isla knew immediately what she wanted to give. She requested a full council meeting, prepared her proposal carefully with Winifred's help. When the day came, she stood before the council with Alaric at the high table, but deliberately not speaking for her. Honored council members, she began, voice steady. For my wisdom gift, I propose the establishment of a public library system, not just here in the capital, but in every major town and village across the kingdom. Murmurs rippled through the council. Chancellor Morris spoke first. A library system for everyone that's expensive and unnecessary. Who else needs access to books besides nobles and scholars? Everyone. Isla's voice was firm. Every child who wants to learn but can't afford tutors. Every craftsman who wants to improve their trade. Every woman who wants to read stories that take her beyond her daily life. Every person who deserves the chance I had to rise through knowledge rather than birth. But the costs, another council member protested, will be recovered many times over. Isla had prepared for this. Educated populations are more productive. They innovate, create, solve problems. They require less oversight because they can read laws themselves. They become teachers, scholars, doctors, engineers. Every copper spent on education returns silver in economic growth. She paused. But beyond economics, there's something more important. A kingdom's strength isn't measured in swords or gold. It's measured in the minds of its people. And right now, we're wasting thousands of brilliant minds because they're born to the wrong families. She looked around the council chamber. I came from a craftsman's home. My father carves wood. My mother weaves cloth. We weren't wealthy, but my parents sacrificed to give me books, and those books opened doors I never imagined existed. They led me here to this chamber, preparing to become your queen. How many other children have potential we'll never discover because books are locked behind wealth and privilege? Silence. The council members were listening now, really listening. This is what I bring to the crown, Ela said quietly. Not gold or armies or noble connections. I bring the certainty that knowledge should be available to all, not hoarded by the few. I bring the vision of a kingdom where every child can read, every adult can learn, every mind can grow. She took a breath. The first library will be here in the capital, but I propose 15 more within 5 years. Funded by a small tax on luxury goods items only the wealthy buy, so the burden falls on those who can afford it. Staffed by scholars who want to teach. Stocked with books on everything from agriculture to medicine to history to stories that inspire. And in gratitude for the trade routes that brought knowledge from distant lands, I propose the central reading room be named the Aldwin Memorial Hall, after Lord Aldwin Ashford, whose merchant ventures connected our kingdom to the wider world. Shock rippled through the room. Aldwin was Donovan's father. Isla was honoring the family of the man who'd hurt her. Alaric spoke for the first time. This honors not just Lord Aldwin, but the principle that good work deserves recognition, regardless of personal feelings. That we build bridges instead of walls. He looked at Isla with pride. I support this proposal fully. Chancellor Morris was doing calculations. Looked up. The cost is manageable. The luxury tax approach is actually clever, won't burden common people. And education programs do increase productivity. There are historical precedents. One by one, council members voiced support. Some enthusiastic, some grudging, but support nonetheless. The vote was called, passed unanimously. Isla's library system was approved. She stood there trembling with relief and joy. She'd done it. Given her kingdom something that would outlast her, would change lives for generations. Alaric came to her when the council adjourned, took her hands. That was extraordinary. The tribute to Aldwin Donovan will hear about that. I hope so. I want him to know that hurt doesn't have to define us, that we can acknowledge good in people who've done us harm, that grace is always an option. You're going to be a remarkable queen. I'm going to try though. Weeks 11 and 12, the wedding preparations consumed everything. Helena worked on Isla's dress day and night, white silk sewn with silver thread in patterns of ancient lichen runes. The runes spelled out words of wisdom, hope, and love. Thomas built something in his workshop, working privately, refusing to show anyone. Wedding gift was all he'd say. Dame Winifred drilled Isla on the ceremony itself, the vows, the processional, the proper way to receive the crown. You're not just marrying Alaric, Winifred explained. You're marrying the kingdom, promising to serve these people. That's what the crown represents. It's not decoration, it's responsibility made visible. Octavia proved true to her word. Helped navigate noble politics, advised on guest lists, mediated disputes between families. One evening a week before the wedding, she found Isla in the archives. I have something for you. Octavia held out a small box. It was my grandmother's. She gave it to me for my wedding day, but she trailed off. I'd like you to have it. Inside was a delicate hair comb, silver with small pearls. Simple, elegant, perfect. Octavia, I can't. You can and should. It needs to be worn by a queen. That was its purpose. She smiled sadly. That I'm not the queen wearing it is, well, that's just how things turned out. But the comb shouldn't suffer for that. Thank you, I'll wear it with honor. I know you will. Octavia turned to leave, paused. I'm happy for you, Tio. I wish I weren't, honestly. Would be easier if I could just hate you. But I am. Happy for you both. The night before the wedding, Isla couldn't sleep. Lay in her childhood bed for the last time, staring at ceiling beams her father had carved with her name when she was born. Tomorrow she'd sleep in the royal chambers. Tomorrow she'd be queen. She heard footsteps, then her mother entered quietly. Can't sleep either, Helena said, sitting on the edge of the bed. Too many feelings. I'm scared and excited and grateful all at once. That sounds about right. Helena smoothed Isla's hair. My baby, my brilliant, stubborn, brave baby, becoming queen tomorrow. I'm going to miss this, living here, being just your daughter. You'll always be just my daughter. Crown doesn't change that. Helena's eyes were bright with tears. But I know what you mean. This chapter closes. New one begins. That's beautiful and sad together. They sat together in comfortable silence. Then Helena said, Your father made you something. He's too shy to give it to you himself. She pulled out a small wooden box from her pocket. Cedar beautifully carved with wolves and books and stars. Isla opened it. Inside, a simple inscription carved into the lid. Remember where you came from. Carry it with you wherever you go. Love, Papa. Isla's throat closed. She held the box to her chest, letting tears fall freely. Tell him I love him. Tell him I'll treasure this forever. Tell him yourself tomorrow. He'll be there, front row, crying probably, though he'll deny it. Helena kissed her forehead. Sleep, sweetheart. Tomorrow is waiting. The wedding day dawned clear and cold. Frost sparkled on grass like scattered diamonds, sky pale blue, stretching endless overhead. Isla woke at dawn in her childhood home. Last morning in this bed, this room, this life. She dressed with her mother's help, the white silk gown that had taken 3 months to make every stitch carrying love. The ancient lichen runes gleamed silver in morning light. Octavia's comb held her hair back. Small white flowers woven through dark strands. No jewelry except Alaric's engagement ring. You're beautiful, Helena whispered. Thomas stood in the doorway, tears already streaming down his weathered face. My little girl. Papa, don't cry or I'll cry and ruin everything. Too late, but he smiled through the tears, held out his arm. Ready? No, but let's go anyway. The ceremony was small by royal standards. Only 100 guests held in the castle gardens under open squanda. No elaborate decorations, just the natural beauty of the space enhanced with white ribbons and candles in glass lanterns. Chairs arranged in rows, narrow path down the center. At the front, under an arch wound with evergreen branches, stood Alaric. He wore his ceremonial armor, black steel chased with silver-red cloak flowing over broad shoulders, crown on his head. But his eyes, his golden eyes, were fixed on her with such love, such certainty, that all Isla's fears quieted. The 5 wolves stood at intervals along the path. Honor guard, family. Music began. Simple melody flutes and strings, beautiful without being overwhelming. Thomas squeezed Isla's arm. I love you. You'll always be my daughter, crown or not. I love you too, Papa. They walked, past friends and scholars from the archives, past nobles who doubted her and now watched with respect, past common people who'd been given seats because this wedding celebrated the bridge between crown and commoner, past Donovan and Celeste who smiled with genuine happiness, past Octavia who inclined her head with grace, past Winifred who nodded approval, past Archon Silas who taught her ancient lichens so many years ago. And then they reached the arch, and Thomas placed Isla's hand in Alaric's, stepped back with Helena, both of them crying. The priestess began the ceremony. Ancient words, sacred vows, blessings older than the kingdom itself. But Isla barely heard the formal parts. She was lost in Alaric's eyes and the warmth of his hand holding hers. Then came the personal vows. Alaric spoke first. Isla Thorne, 450 years ago, I didn't know I was waiting for you. But I was. Waiting for someone who would challenge me, surprise me, make me want to be better than I am. Someone who saw the man beneath the crown and chose him anyway. You saved my kingdom from war. But more than that, you saved me from loneliness. I vow to honor you, respect you, and love you for as long as we both shall live. To be your partner, not your master. Your equal, not your king. I choose you, Isla. today and every day after. Isla's turn. Her voice was steady despite tears threatening. Alaric Greymane, 3 months ago I sat alone at a wedding certain my life was over. Then you asked me to act like I was with you and everything changed. You saw me when I was invisible, valued me when I felt worthless, believed in me before I believed in myself. You gave me courage I didn't know I had. She paused, squeezed his hands. But this vow isn't just to you. It's to this kingdom, these people. I vow to bring wisdom where silence reigned, to give voice to those who had none, to offer hope where only hunger grew. I vow to serve not from obligation, but from love, to learn every day, to never forget where I came from or who I serve. She looked past Alaric to the gathered crowd. I vow to be a queen for all of you, not just the privileged few, to open doors that were closed, to build bridges instead of walls, to prove that worth comes from character, not birth. This is my promise. This is my purpose. This is who I choose to be. A sound rippled through the crowd, not applause, something deeper. Recognition, common people seeing themselves in her words, understanding that she meant it. The priestess spoke the final blessing. Bound their hands with silk cord, placed a circlet on Isla's head, not the full crown yet that came later, but a silver circlet with a single stone. Simple, beautiful, perfect. By the power vested in me and the will of this kingdom, I declare you married, King and Queen of Valdres. What the gods have joined, let no person separate. Alaric kissed her, tender, reverent, full of promise. The crowd erupted in cheers. The wolves howled in unison, their voices carrying joy and blessing and triumph. When they broke apart, Isla turned to face the crowd. Alaric beside her, wolves surrounding them, sigh endless above. This was real, this was happening. She was queen. Not despite being common, because of everything being common had taught her. The celebration that followed was joyous. Food and music and dancing. Nobles mingling with commoners, barriers dissolving, at least for this one perfect afternoon. Isla danced with her father first, both of them crying and laughing. You did it, little bird, you flew. I learned from the best carpenter in the kingdom. You taught me to build things that last. Then with Alaric, a proper waltz this time. They'd practiced and she'd learned, but more than that, she trusted him completely. How does it feel? He asked quietly as they moved across the floor. Terrifying, wonderful, right? She smiled up at him. Like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. You are. You always were. I was just lucky enough to recognize it. The feast lasted into evening. When the sun set and stars emerged, Alaric led Isla to a private alcove, presented her with a gift, the wooden box her father had made. Your father wanted you to have this now. Isla opened it. Inside, nested in velvet, was a carved wooden heart. Small, simple, perfect. A note tucked beside it in Thomas's careful handwriting. My darling girl, you carry our hearts with you always. This is a reminder you are loved not for what you've become, but for who you've always been. We're proud beyond words. Love Papa and Mama. She cried then, let herself cry, Alaric holding her while she wept happy tears. For everything she'd gained and everything she'd never lose. When she'd cried herself out, Alaric wiped her tears gently. They're right, you know. I love you for who you are. Queen is just the title. Isla is the person I chose. I love you too. So much it scares me. Good scared or bad scared. Both, the kind of scared that means it matters. They returned to the celebration, danced more, ate cake that tasted like honey, and Hope accepted congratulations. Donovan approached, shook Alaric's hand, hugged Isla briefly. Thank you, he said quietly, for the Aldwin Memorial Hall. My father cried when he heard. Good work deserves recognition regardless of complicated history. You're going to be an amazing queen. I'm going to try. Octavia approached last as the celebration was winding down. Embraced Isla, formally whispered in her ear. You were right. Grace is strength, not weakness. Thank you for teaching me that. Thank you for your help. I'll need it going forward. You'll have it, I promise. That night in the royal chambers, Isla stood at the window looking out over the kingdom. Her kingdom now. Lights scattered across the city, below people living their lives, trusting her to help lead them wisely. Alaric came to stand beside her, wrapped his arms around her from behind. Overwhelming, he asked. Yes, but in a good way. They stood that way for a long time, watching their kingdom sleep. Then Isla spoke. I want to start the library project immediately. This week. I want to see it happening. Alaric laughed softly. Of course you do. That's who you are. Queen for one day and already working. That's why you married me. One of many reasons. But yes, that's part of it. They went to bed eventually exhausted but happy. The wolves slept outside their door. And Isla fell asleep as Queen loved and valued and finally completely certain she was exactly where she belonged. 5 years later, the Royal Library of Valdres opened on a spring morning. 3 stories of stone and glass designed to welcome rather than intimidate. The Aldwin Memorial Reading Room took up the entire ground floor, rows of tables, comfortable chairs, windows letting in natural light, books lining shelves that reached toward vaulted ceilings. 15 smaller libraries had already opened across the kingdom. Literacy rates had climbed dramatically. The kingdom flourished. Queen Isla stood in the reading room, 6 months pregnant with her first child, one hand resting on her rounded belly. Around her, common people browsed shelves, running fingers over book spines with reverence. Children sat cross-legged while a librarian read aloud. Students at tables studying texts that would have been inaccessible to them 5 years ago. A young girl approached, maybe 9 years old, wearing patched but clean clothes, clutching a book to her chest. She curtsied awkwardly. "Your Majesty." "Queen Isla, I thank you for this place." Isla knelt carefully, giving her pregnancy to the girl's level. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Marin. My papa works in the mills." "What are you reading, Marin?" The girl showed her the book, Ancient Histories of Valdres. "I want to be a scholar, like you, learn old languages and help people." Isla's throat tightened. "You can be. This library exists so girls like you, like I was, can have that chance. Study hard, ask questions. Never let anyone tell you that you can't learn something just because of where you came from." "Did people tell you that?" "Many people. I proved them wrong. You can too." The girl beamed, curtsied again, and ran back to her table. Dame Winifred approached now, 67, gray hair, completely white. "That's the 4th one this week. Young girls asking how to be scholars like you. You're inspiring a generation." That's what this was for, not just books, but possibility. Isla walked to a display case near the entrance. Inside her father's wooden box, a plaque beside it read, "From the hands of Master Carpenter Thomas Thorne to the heart of Queen Isla. Remember, every great story starts with one person brave enough to turn the page. May all who enter here turn their own pages toward better futures." Alaric appeared through the crowd, wolves trailing. He'd aged not at all, but Isla had changed. The Lycan blood bond had slowed her aging significantly. She'd lived centuries now. "How are you feeling?" he asked, hand joining hers on her belly. "Good. She's determined to rearrange my internal organs today." He laughed, strong like her mother. They stood together in the library, surrounded by the sound of pages turning, of children learning, of a kingdom growing wiser. And Isla thought about that night 5 years ago, sitting alone at a wedding, certain her life was over. She'd had no idea it was just beginning, that the worst night would open the door to the best chapter, that being broken open would let the light in. She touched her father's wooden box through the glass. "Remember where you came from." She had. She would. Every girl like Marin was a reminder. Every library that opened was a monument. Every new scholar from a common family was proof. You didn't need to be born special to become special. You needed opportunity and effort and someone willing to take a chance on you. Isla had been given that chance. Now she spent every day extending it to others. As sunset painted the library in gold and amber light, Queen Isla Thorne, scholar, wife, mother-to-be, bridge between crown and common, rested her hand on her belly and felt her daughter kick. And she whispered to the child who would be born into a kingdom transformed. "You're going to grow up in a world where anything is possible, where worth comes from character, where every door is open if you're brave enough to walk through." The baby kicked again, as if in agreement. Isla smiled, looked around the library, her gift, her legacy, her promise kept, and knew with absolute certainty this was enough. This was everything.